Yeah, it's started. Yeah, please.
Okay. So welcome everybody to the special keynote address by Professor Pravina Shukla, succinctly titled Folklore Today. To chair her session, we have with us Dr. Amit Singh. I would like to take the opportunity to introduce him. Dr. Amit Singh is an assistant professor at the School of Undergraduate Studies, Ambedkar University, Delhi. He completed his Ph.D. from Jawaharlal Nehru University, wherein he worked on the transformations in Avdi folk songs. He has recently been granted an ICSSR project titled Kumbh Consciousness and its Folk Imagination, and we look forward to seeing how that unfolds. Apart from that, his most significant contribution to the field of folkloristics has been through the courses that he teaches at Ambedkar University, Delhi, which introduce undergraduate and postgraduate students to the field of folklore through theoretical interventions, but also through field trips and interactions with practitioners and artists. He has he regularly presents his papers at the American Folklore Society, but the best thing about him is that he has never gone to the conference alone, but is always accompanied by a large number of students to ensure that everybody benefits from the network. And his pedagogy is unique and interesting, and he always makes sure to take us outside the classroom and into the field through his assessments. I would just there are many instances that I would like to mention, but just one brief instance that I'd like to share is that once for the folklore course that he offered, instead of opting for a traditional assessment in the form of a quiz or an assignment, he opted to have a potluck for us to reflect on food ways and traditions. I could go on and on, but I would like to hand the mic over to him, and it is a personal pleasure for me to introduce him because he happens to be my
Assalamu
PhD
alaikum wa
supervisor.
rahmatullahi wa
Uh,
barakatuh.
Thank you so much, sir, and over to you, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Don't listen to Meghal. When students start talking about their teachers, they are always hyperbolic. But she's also very kind and generous, and thank you very much. This is my turn to be, introducing or expressing my feelings. I want to say
Assalamu alaikum.
salam, salam. I miss the name. Who is the person whom I'm supposed to say hello? Hello, dear. Namaste, salam.
So it was this interruption.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Anyway, I thank CFSR and the entire team for organizing this event, and also to make me part of this significant event. It is my absolute honor and privilege to welcome and introduce our keynote speaker, Professor Pravina Shukla, as it would have been anyone else's. I can easily conclude this task in a simple sentence comprising few phrases like a wonderful mentor, an excellent teacher, a significant author, an impressive field worker.
Ay, tara si Busol Mango. Pasundo koros na.
Mir, okay, একটু delete করে দাও. Mir, please delete him.
No, we can just mute, Yeah. Thank you. So I'll repeat, and I'm very glad that I'm repeating this. I can complete this introduction in a single sentence comprising few phrases, as I recognize her, and I'm very proud that I know her, in these capacities. She's a wonderful mentor, and in the same chronology, she's an excellent teacher, significant author, impressive field worker, worth emulation, and a lovely, lovely friend. Let me briefly illustrate these points about our speaker. Pravina Shukla is a Provost Professor in the Department of Folklore and Ethnomusicology at Indiana University. She was elected Fellow of the American Folklore Society in 2020.
Subhanallah, Allahu Akbar.
At Indiana University, she has won 6 teaching awards, including, and many more in the offing, I'm sure, including the President's Award for Distinguished Teaching and the Graduate Mentor of the Year Award. She's the author of The Grace of Four Moons, Dress Adornment and the Art of Body in Modern India, which was published in 2008. Winner of the Anand Kumaraswamy Prize of the Association of Asian Studies, given to the author of the Best English Language Work in South Asian Studies, and the Melia Davenport Award of the Costume Society of America in recognition of, I quote, excellence in scholarship in the study of costume and to promote research and publication on costume. May I request the organizers to mute? I think it's some other account which has been used by.
Sir, can you just give me
Yes, sir,
one
we
minute?
have blocked.
We have restricted the entry also. Please do not allow any entry for some time.
All right. All right.
Please carry on. Yeah. So you are muted, sir. Can you please unmute? I'm extremely sorry for that. Yeah. Amit, sir, can you please unmute you? Yeah, now it's fine, sir.
Okay. I'll come back to the book, The Grace of Four Moons, Dress, Adornment, and the Art of Body in Modern India, which was published in 2008. Winner of the Anand Kumaraswamy Prize of the Association of Asian Studies, given to the author of the Best English Language Work in South Asian Studies, and the Melia Davenport Award of the Costume Society of America in recognition of, I quote, excellence in scholarship in the study of costume and to promote research and publication on costume, unquote. She also wrote Costume, Performing Identities Through Dress in 2015 and co-authored The Individual and Tradition Folkloristic Perspectives, published in 2013, Sacred Art, Catholic Saints and Contemporary Gods in Modern Brazil, published in 2018, and Folk Art Continuity, Creativity and Brazilian Quotidian, published in 2023. She's currently at work on a new book, India on My Mind, Indian Restaurants in the American South, conducting field work among Indian-born chefs and restaurant owners in the southern United States, noting continuities, changes, and adaptations to Indian food for a new audience of eaters. One could keep going, but I think I'll welcome Pravina with the phrase, as they say in Hindustani, "Bahut hi adab aur samman ke saath," with honor and deep respect, Professor Pravina Shukla.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes. Okay. I'm a little bit rattled by the people trying to get in, but if you can hear me okay, that's fine. So the first thing I want to say is I did something tonight that I've never done before. I just had a cup of espresso coffee. It's almost 2 o'clock in the morning here. So, so I'm up, I am ready. I'm very excited to be here. Before I begin, hold on. What I'm going to do is set my timer. I know that this session has an hour. I know we're over. I do not have an hour, so don't worry. I will speak a little bit slow so we can have the right amount of time. I'd like to first begin by thanking the organizers of the conference. I want to especially thank Meghal Karki for her patience with me. And I especially want to thank my friend, Professor Amit Singh. So thank you for that beautiful, generous introduction. And I'm so glad that you were the one that introduced me. The second thing I want to say is I've been told I have a very strong American accent. I'm going to try to speak slowly. I'm giving you a minute to get used to my accent. So I'm sorry if I'm a little bit difficult to understand. I'll try to speak slowly. As I said, I do not have an hour's worth of the talk, okay? Let me introduce myself. My parents are from India. They were both born and brought up in Banaras in UP. I was born and brought up outside of India. I was born in Norway. I grew up in Brazil, and I lived in the United States. And therefore, I'm particularly honored to be addressing young folklorists in India today. It's very much, it's very meaningful for me to be asked to give this address. So thank you very much for your audience, for your invitation. It means very much to me to be speaking at the inaugural conference. I hope there's many, many more of these. I was introduced to the discipline of folklore as an undergraduate student by my undergraduate teacher, Alan Dundes, who many people have heard of. He inspired me to get a master's and a Ph.D. in folklore from the University of California. I've been teaching at Indiana University for 24 years. Today, my remarks are based on 35 years of experience of folklore as a student, as a teacher, and as a scholar. So that is where I am coming from in addressing you right now. Everything good so far? Can everybody understand me? Yes? Okay, good.
Yes, yes.
Good. To situate ourselves in folklore today, which is a topic, the title of my talk, we must briefly look at folklore in the past to understand the present situation and to know where we're going in the future. Early folklorists in the 19th century in Europe, where the discipline began, were interested in history. They were interested in the past. It was a colonial and a classist era. They were looking back to understand their heritage. The goal at that time was collection. The result was the deep archives that are found in Europe today. A lot of collection from what they deemed to be the folk people, peasants. Once you have distinct collections all over Europe, the next step, logical step, is to start to see international connections. Different countries have the same stories. What are the connections? That led to a historical and a geographical perspective. The most important is something called the historic geographic method, where you try to understand movement of people, migration, and alternative history by seeing who has which similar stories, who has an earlier version, who has a later version, and based on that, you can start to see how people moved and migrated. So far, so good. That's the 19th century. In the 20th century, the energy shifts to the United States. The focus in the United States is not the present, not the past, but the present. With a documentation of the variety of cultures in this big, vast land of native residents and newcomers. The newcomers are willing immigrants and unwilling enslaved human beings. All those people arrive in America with the influence of Franz Boas, great anthropologist, the father of American folk anthropology. We embrace the philosophy of cultural relativism. This is different. Now this is something that's not happening back in Europe in the previous century. Here, we start to see different cultures. We understand something called cultural relativism. We see every culture as distinct and worthy in itself. One is not better than the other. They're all in themselves interesting, distinct, and we start to understand that we have to learn the culture from inside out, not outside in. From inside out is what happens in America, is what happens where we are right now. I'm leading to where I want folklore to be today. The colonial was to look from the outside in, to understand a culture from our perspective. The way we want to be is to understand it from inside out, from the people's perspective. Now, let's come to the present. What does that mean? There are two components, I believe, that are part of folklore today, and those are interlinked. One is a method and one is a theory. The method is fieldwork, and the theory is performance theory. And both of those are going to combine. You cannot apply the theory of performance theory without the method of fieldwork. I'm going to talk about that, and I'm going to exemplify that with my work in India. Remember, the historical phase was a phase of collecting folklore. people were believed to be passive tradition bearers. They just kept saying this, they kept doing this because they've always been doing it. They're passively doing it. All we have to do is collect from them. That's the past. In the mid-1960s, in the United States, a theoretician, a folklorist, a linguist called Del Hymes gives us performance theory. All of a sudden, we understand there's a theory of creativity. Folklore is not just repeating something, it's a creative act. Every single time is enacted. That totally changes the field of folklore. So from the 60s on, we understand human beings are not passive bearers of tradition. They're active creators of folklore. It's giving them a lot of agency. These are not stupid, uneducated people. They're creating, they're making decisions. We're giving them the credit. That's where we are right now. What we understand is people are reworking, redeveloping, reinventing, creating folklore amid a set of constraints and a set of conditions. Two things happening at once. Some things are going to hinder, some things are going to help. People are combining, they're improvising, they're innovating. And this is one of the words in the title of the theme of the conference, is this innovation. There is creation. I quote Henry Glassey's famous definition of tradition as the creation of the future out of the past. Tradition is not some mindless thing we do. We are creating. Every reenactment of tradition is an innovative act, giving a lot of wonderful credit to this creative impetus. So what we know, there are active choices being made in the present that influence the future, that use the past as a resource. So we're standing in the present, we have the past, a million things we can choose from. We choose some of them and we affect the future. That's what we do every single time we sing a song, we tell a tale, we paint a scroll, we dance a song, a dance. Now, how do we, so performance theory broadens our goal from mere collection to documentation and interpretation of creative acts. There's nothing wrong with collection. Archives are wonderful. Archives are great. Libraries are great. But that's not where we have to stop. That's just the beginning. The next step is interpretation, analysis, meaning is where we have to go. How do we understand the process of creation? There's only one way, ethnographic fieldwork. Now, you're thinking right now, Pravina, that's an obvious point. It's not. Old and young folklorists today are not doing the kind of fieldwork that would lead to careful, methodical data documentation, data collection that will give us what performance theory wants us to do, which is have enough rich data to come to meaningful, deep interpretations. Now more than ever, I truly believe at 2 o'clock in the morning here that the future of folklore is fieldwork. Now, what do we need? What kinds of documentation does fieldwork make us engage in? Several. One, first, the text. The text has to be documented. How is the text defined? Text, the word text comes from the word textile. Textile is a bunch of threads, separate threads that are woven together, held together as a unit that you can pick up and give to somebody else. That unit could be a textile, that unit could be a song, that unit could be a story, that unit could be a ritual. It doesn't matter what it is, all of it is text. Not just stories, not just songs, it could be puppets, it could be pots, it could be baskets. All of those are text. The text has to be analyzed, documented. How? Well, photographs, drawings, measurements, descriptions of materials, colors, patterns, motifs, form, volume, if you're talking about material culture. If you're talking about songs and stories, a rigorous method of ethnopoetics. Ethnopoetics means capturing the text in writing the way it sounds when you hear it, the way it's sung, the way it's spoken. You should be able to tell exactly how it was sung and how it was spoken by reading it. What does that mean? You have to write note pauses, note intonation, note stresses, note accent, note cadence, note silence. All those are part of the creative act of telling a story or singing a song. The text is the first. What's the second thing? We have to document all the relevant contexts of creation and performance. For example, the physical space, the environmental conditions, and during what season, in what kind of stage is that particular song or dance enacted. Third, the social context of creation and performance. How did one learn? Who did one learn from? Does someone teach? Who do you teach to? We have to document the context of history and tradition of the text, whether the text is a cane mat or whether the text is a ritual song. Fourth, the creator's biography. These are things that we take for granted. Not just biodata, what's your name, what's your father's name, where you were born, but long interviews about the person. Who is this person? How do they enter this community of creativity, of, let's say, singers or artists? From the creator, we also want to learn what is your vision of excellence? What are positive examples that you try to emulate and copy? What are negative examples that you try to avoid? We all have that. What are the kinds of choices you're making, and what are those choices based on? We want to understand all the actors of this creative act, the maker, the consumers, the audience. Everybody is involved in this creative act. I'm gonna illustrate my points in a little bit. We also want to document the entire full repertory, not just one isolated song or story or basket. The entire thing. The biggest, most holistic picture you get will give you then an understanding of that particular text as it relates to all the other ones. Then you understand the choices that are being made. Fifth, and most importantly, we have to learn the artist's interpretation of his or her own art. This is a political act. We don't come in as educated people with PhDs and try to interpret their art. We ask them for their interpretation. That's the understanding the culture from inside out. Remember, in the past, these peasants have no idea what they're saying. We are smart, we interpret. Now we know that that is wrong, that is elitist, especially in the context of India. That's a colonial holdover. We don't want that. We want to know what the artists think of their own art as a major goal. Again, you're thinking, why are you telling us such obvious things? Look at the folklore being performed today. A lot of this is not being done. I'm giving you an ideal that a standard I use myself, that I hope inspires some of these young folklorists on this call. Through careful and deliberate fieldwork, we gather interviews with individuals, not members of homogeneous collectives, not anonymous, the folk of the state of India, the folk. These are individuals. They have names, they are people, they have biographies. what we try to do as much as we can, and I'm not talking about India, I'm talking about every country in the world, we try to treat them with dignity, with autonomy, with humanity, if we can. That is a goal. Not all of us can succeed, but if we can, we should do that. We understand individuals to be creative actors, creating amid a set of conditions that help. For example, they were born and brought up in a family of singers, and conditions that hinder. For example, environmental or social conditions. Let's say there was a drought one year. Insects ate up all the crop. Baskets were not being able to made. That's an example of an environmental factor that hindered the production of baskets. All creative acts are placed in contexts. The context is historical, political, social, religious, financial, and very personal. So just where are we right now? What we understand folklore to be, folklore is a result of creativity, human creativity. That's what folklore is. I define folklore in my undergraduate class as creativity in everyday life. It's a beautiful, very positive way of understanding folklore. If that's what folklore is, we have to understand the creativity. We have to record the text. We have to record the creation if we can see it. We have to record the conditions and the constraints. And how can we do that? Through really good fieldwork. There's no other option but fieldwork. That's the first part of what I want to say. Let me now say that again with specific examples from my fieldwork in India to then now make explicit what I've been talking about. The methodology I just outlined for you, I applied in my first book, The Grace of Four Moons, that Amit talked about. Now, let me give you examples of my fieldwork in India to make these points. One of the creative acts that I document in my book is the weaving of Banarasi saris. Remember, my family is from Banaras. We all know what a Banarasi sari is. You do. People in America don't, but you Indian people do. They're the beautiful silk brocade saris. Banaras had, when I was doing fieldwork, 200,000 weavers. I'm not talking about an isolated five old people doing it. I'm talking about 200,000 people. The finished, beautiful end result is a silk gold brocade sari. That's the text. But it includes a lot of different individuals that are part of the different parts of the creation of that sari. Let me give you an example. There's a designer. These are all people I talk to in India. There's a designer. The designer creates the overall pattern of the sari. If you can picture a sari, there's a motif that's going to be on the body, on the field. There's something's going to happen on the border. It could pick up the motif. It could be bigger or smaller. It could be a different scale. It could be a different color. The pallu is going to have yet another. Those are all designed by somebody. So that's a designer. When I was there, I interviewed somebody called the cardvala. The cardvala is the guy who's literally punching holes in a cardboard box, a cardboard card, one after the other. That's going to be fed to the jacquard loom that will then tell you which threads are going to pull up. So when you're weaving the sari, the cardvala is actually punching holes in a whole bunch of cardboard cards. Those are the owners of the loom, of the atelier. They're making decisions. They're making decisions about the color and the fabric. What kind of fabric are they going to provide? Rayon, silk, cotton, etc. They're making all kinds of decisions. They're the weavers. Those are people that have come in, hired artists. There's a buyer. Somebody's buying that sari in the sari market. There's a seller and an owner of a shop. That guy is deciding what inventory to buy for his own shop. There's a customer that goes into the shop, chooses that sari among thousands of other ones. There's a woman who opens her closet and decides which of all the saris in her closet she's going to wear. She's going to decide that. She's going to decide everything else. What bangles, what sandals, what handbag, what shawl. The point is there are thousands of choices that are being made by a whole bunch of different actors. If we look at one object, which is a Banarasi sari, that's what I'm saying. It's vast. It's almost endless. It's beautiful in all of its possibilities. There are hundreds of constraints in this creative act. For example, the rainy season. Remember, those cards are cardboard. What happens to cardboard during the monsoon? It expands. The machine gets stuck. It's much harder to weave in the rainy season. That's an environmental constraint. There's a financial constraint. The cost of silk and zari, up or down. If it's too expensive, you want to keep the price of the sari down, you're going to have less gold brocade. That's a financial reason. There's social reasons. What's the fashion in Bollywood right now? That's going to affect what is being made, what is being bought, and what's being sold. A whole bunch of people are going to be watching to see what is in fashion. All of those are going to be conditions. In order to document the sari, we have to know all of those things to understand why that one was made, why that one was bought, why that one was worn. Let's take it one step further. All art that is created is subjected to evaluation. This is another understanding of performance theory as it's practiced here in the United States. The assessment is going to be personal or social. Sometimes you go, oh, I don't like that. I don't like that. Or you're going to say, that's very inappropriate. That this is not the occasion to tell that joke. So that could be a social or it could be personal. The paradigm of performance theory says every act of communication is rendered artistically to be evaluated by somebody else. I told a joke, people laughed or didn't laugh. I sang a song, people clapped or didn't clap. I made a pot, you either bought it or you didn't. Things are being evaluated. What did I do in India? I was interested in documenting what makes an excellent Banarasi sari. Folklorists are interested in art, artistic communication, artistic rendering. What is a beautiful version of a sari? I asked the weavers, what is an excellent sari? Tell me, describe it. What is an excellent version? They said, the design is the most important thing. This is from the weaver, the person who's making it. Design, what is a relationship of the motif of the border, of the pallu, of the field? That has to hold together as a design element. Also, the color and the fabric are important. The weight of the sari is important. The weight depends on the type of material and the amount of brocading. More brocading means a heavier sari. That depends on the season. During the winter, you want a heavier, heavier color, and more brocading. During the summer, so you see how many different interesting constraints are going to be. Then they said to the weavers, only then do we look at the quality of the weaving. That's not very important. They're looking at aesthetics. The middle person, the seller, I asked him, what makes an excellent sari? This person's not an artist. This person's art is the art of commerce. This person is buying and selling. They're not looking at aesthetics, they're looking at technical matters. They said the craftsmanship is the most important thing in a sari. It should not have shading. That means it was woven, and it was beaten down. When you pass the weft back and forth, you beat it down. If you don't beat it with, if you beat it with inconsistent force, it doesn't, it's the shading, the streaking. And warp count. There should be 6,000 to 8,000 threads because that creates a round design, a mango leaf, paisley, peacock, and allows for better design. And and the quality of the choice of color, but only as it applies to me moving my inventory. I have to sell it. That's the point of view of the middle person, the person that's not making, the art of commerce, not creation. Finally, the wearer, the only woman in this group. What makes an excellent sari? I asked. What was the answer? It must look good on my body. It's not abstract anymore. It becomes very personal. This is the only person wearing the thing on her body. It must not be bulky. Who wants 6 meters of folded, draped, and tucked fabric? That does not flatter your body. Design is important only what is in fashion. The color is important as long as it makes me, affects my skin tone. The fabric, I like silk in the winter. I like warm because it keeps me warm. I like chiffon in the rainy season because it dries quickly under the ceiling fan. Very specific. That can only be said by somebody who wears a sari during the rainy season, during the winter. What does this example show you? There's no one way of understanding something. It has to do with the relationship of the human being to that object. The maker is going to have a very different relationship than the seller, than the wearer. That's the point of that example. There's no absolute judgment of what makes a beautiful sari. It depends on who you are and how you're seeing it. No single one definition. So you see the assessment, the judgment is contextual. It's different for each individual. They focus on different features. They all look at the same things: design, craftsmanship, and the palpable material, the fabric, but they put it in different order. If we went to a museum and looked at a Banarasi sari in a museum case, there's a lot you can say about it. You could study it. You can say a lot about it, but you can't say everything about it. You're not going to understand it unless you talk to not one, but all the categories of people that are involved in the creation, use, and admiration of that particular object. There is no one meaning. Whenever people say, what's the meaning of that? The question is, to whom? It's going to be different for different people, and I hope the sari example has exemplified that. In keeping with the complete documentation of exact fieldwork in line with performance theory, I continue to theorize the creative act of adornment by observing additional contexts of creation and contexts of meaning. After production, after you take gold and silk and you make a sari, the sari goes through 2 different sets of exchange. It is sold from the maker sells it to a seller, the seller sells it to the wearer. Then the woman has it. Now we have a whole bunch of contexts, the context of the body. She's going to put the sari together with every other item of adornment. There's a spatial context. Where will I be seen wearing the sari? There's a temporal context. Where am I in my life stage? Are you a child? Are you a new bride? Are you a widow? Those are all going to affect what clothing you're wearing, what kind of sari you're wearing. There's a historical context. What's the current fashion trend right now? There's a social context. Is it an appropriate occasion to wear that? Can I wear something this elaborate to this particular occasion? There's a religious context. What are the religious parameters of acceptability in terms of dress? And there's several individual contexts: gender, age, the body changing sizes and shapes, likes and dislikes. Now my hair is white, I can't wear this anymore. Now I hate blue, I used to love blue. There's all kinds of things that are happening that are affecting the final product. you see that the complete study of any genre, any text, incorporates various contexts of creation, contexts of use, contexts of meaning. And you can only accomplish this through fieldwork. You can't guess. What I just told you about the sari, I couldn't have come up with that. How would I know? I've never woven a sari in my life. I don't wear saris. I grew up outside of, I was born and brought up outside of India. You can only know that if you talk to people. You have to talk to people. That's my point over and over again. I joined the faculty of Indiana University here in the year 2000. I was hired to replace Professor Warren Roberts, who was the first person in the United States to get a Ph.D. in folklore in 1953. He famously said that history accounts for 5% of humanity. 5% of any given population of any country have the correct gender, socioeconomic class, education level, religion, to be able to enter the official historical record. We're talking about kings and emperors. We're talking about politicians. We're talking about famous writers. Warren Roberts said, history accounts for 5% of humanity. Folklore picks up the missing 95%. That's the reason. That is why I get up every morning and I go and teach. That's why I've been a folklorist. We're picking those people up that are not showing up in the historical record. The 95% make their existence known in the world by songs and stories and painted scrolls and festivals and dance, and the list goes on and on and on. Think about 95% of the population of India. Right? We're talking about 1 billion people. 95% of the population of India. That's a lot of people that must enter the historical record, whose lives matter. What percentage of these people, 95% of people in India, what percentage of those people are privileged enough to have electricity and high-speed internet and to own a computer? Online folklore is worthy of study, but it's excluding a lot of people. A focus on the tribal populations of India is worthy of study, but it's excluding the majority of the population that resides in the metropolitan big cities and in the agricultural farmlands of India, and those people have as much folklore as anybody else. India is probably the richest country in the world in its breadth, depth, and variety of folklore. Careful documentation, respectful analysis would bring in millions of people who are not visible in the historical record. They matter. They matter too. Folklore is egalitarian, it's democratic, it's inclusive. I'm very proud to be of Indian descent. The cultures of India, defined by its variety of regions, religions, languages, and geographies, all should be celebrated by allowing the creators, the tellers and the musicians, the singers and the visual artists, the dancers and the puppet masters to tell their own stories in their own voices through their own folklore. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Meghal, can you unmute?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Pravina ma'am. It was a deeply insightful lecture, and our chat box is bursting with questions. And Amit, sir, how would you like to go about it? Should I pose the question and then, or would you like to? So you're muted. Okay, I will. Could you unmute, sir, or change the settings so that I can?
I think I will make him a host.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
I'm sorry, I started going really fast. I got very passionate.
No. Yeah, I think, ma'am, your pace was perfect. And I would just like to take a moment because I am an avid sari wearer and collector. So for me, in particular, this talk was absolutely illuminating. And I think, are we ready with first? I think we'd like to proceed with Amit sir's remarks, and then we would begin with questions. Yes, perfect.
What a lovely session, Pravina. As expected, very insightful, as I can see in the chat box. I have how many hours we have for my remarks, Meghal? I need 2-3 hours. I do not want 2-3 minutes as well.
I need another cup of coffee.
No, beautiful, see, a lot of anxieties of folklorist teachers and practitioners in India has been consolidated by lecture. And I think we shall plan a series to take it forward, Pravina. And as a friend, we can take this liberty with you. I'm sure there are young minds who want to listen to you. They have a lot of questions in the chat box. Unfortunately, we will not be able to take them all. I'll go by the chronology. But I must also confess one thing, that my bandwidth is very, very shaky. And Pravina, forgive me for my extremely supersonic pace. I speak very fast. So I'll try to be slow. My bandwidth is very slow. I am fast. So if I vanish, please don't take me for a trickster. I'm not vanishing as a trickster. Anyway, one quick remark, 2-3 remarks, which I have said. This is very important for us to understand that performative theory or performance theory and fieldwork, they are interdependent and intertwined, if you want to understand folk life and folklore. And in a country like India, where at most this 5% of people ignored will be taken to say 70%, not 95%, but 70% in rural India. Our population resides more than 70% in rural India, and we have a pro-city bias in the academy. All the universities and institutions are located in towns, cities, urban centers. I mean, how do we bridge the gap? That is one thing. And not that it is my original idea. The first education minister of India, Dr. S. Radhakrishnan, on his report on higher education, actually gave a blueprint to convert all the villages. We have about 600,000 villages in India, to convert all the villages, or at least the cluster of villages, into universities and colleges. And the role model in front him in his that he was reflecting on, or he was referring to, was Danish people's colleges that actually inspired many universities and colleges in America, and they're very high performing universities. 70 years after that, we have not even thought of making a dent in that vision. So what Pravina is trying to say, that young folklorists should, I'm not saying that, okay, equate folklore with Gram or Anagar Sahitya. It's not the Sahitya or literature or lore of only rural India. It's very vast. But what I'm trying to say, there is a gap that needs to be bridged. And more than that, there are two things I'll quickly say, and I'll go to the young minds because we do not have even 5 minutes left. I want to thank Pravina on behalf of all students, all young minds here, for reiterating that we need to be genuine and honest field workers. There is no substitute of that. And we have to be very careful in doing that. And also we have to understand the dignity and autonomy of people all across the globe. That means in my 20 years of experience as a field worker, both as a student and a teacher, I have realized that my informants and collaborators have everything to give and nothing to expect, not even the gratitude and humility. But that doesn't mean we are going to let go of gratitude, humility, and responsibility as a folklorist. So we have to do a lot of unlearning, undoing, because that training is very, very strong. Anyway, I think I'm sure Pravina's address today would inspire many of you. I noted it down because I wanted to write it and read it for you while she was speaking. I am sure Pravina's address today would inspire many of you. With this wish and my ardent hopes for a flourishing future for our discipline, I open the floor, rather a screen for Q&A. I'll take first three. My apologies in advance. I cannot stress much because there is another session. However, we'll go for first three, which has been there in the chat box. All other people can write to the organizers, and we will try to convey it to Pravina, and let's see where does it go. Anyway, so I think first person, and correct me if I'm wrong in this, is Maheshwar Kumar. He says, "Dear Pravina ma'am, when we take into account culture or performance as a text, we tend to translate or analyze it as ethnopoetics. Then we also need to understand that something is always lost in translation or analysis. Correct me if I am wrong. Given this context, how we as indigenous scholars could remain as bias-free as possible in our representations or analysis." I think that's why ethnopoetics. But Pravina, the anxiety of Maheshwar is that a lot is lost when we are transitioning from, say, oral to written, or context to other. So is every conversation. So any suggestions to overcome that?
Yeah, so in the interest of time, let me answer this question and answer a bigger question too that is implied in what you just asked, Amit. The first thing, and I didn't mention it, and I'm sorry, is this relationship between informant and scholar should really be a relationship of collaboration, right? So that's one of the things, as much as you can, given the inequality of gender, social class, education, as much as you can, it has to be collaboration. And so what you do is you ask, let's say, whether it's transcription, ethnopoetics, or interpretation, if you can ask somebody, this is what I understand you to say, what this means. Does that sound right? Check with that person. In the past, you would go, you'd get this folklore, you come back to your big, beautiful, air-conditioned, house and analyze it. Now you try to work in collaboration. I think that's the only way you can. I'm not being naive. There is a difference. I'm never going to be the person, a sorry weaver. I'm never going to be a sorry weaver. But I have to get as close as I can by asking and trying to enter into a collaborative, respective relationship. In terms of ethnopoetics, the ideal would be to have a transcription as well as a recording. Of course, a recording is more expensive, and a recording requires an archive to have, especially with digital recordings. Digital media are not stable. They're not as stable, and you have to have an archive that will be able to keep that. There are tapes in the archives here in Indiana University that have disintegrated. The tape is gone. Thank God there was a written version, not as good as a tape, but a companion that can stand in if something is lost. So I think we just have to do the best we can. If you can get a recording, great. Even if you get a recording, you have to have something written down, because a paper is going to be more stable than a digital recording. Sorry, that was too long. I know we have a limited amount of time.
Thank you, Pravina. Wonderful. I remember in one of our conversations a few years back, Pravina said, make sure that you go to your field repeatedly. And I said, okay, that's what Impressionists were doing while they were painting. Go to the same place in the morning, evening, a day later, a week. Yeah. I realized that our students do that very seldom. They will not go to the same informant repeatedly. And that's the message that will be helpful. So I'm rephrasing your statement, Pravina. Ideally, I should have invited the participants who are asking these questions, but because of the paucity of time, I'm reading it from the chat box. Sunil asks, ma'am, how to exclude influence of mainstream religious understanding while documenting folk deities and rituals. I will add, despite folk religion being very different from mainstream religion, but I think his anxiety is my anxiety and everyone else's anxiety also. Mainstream religion is actually influencing folklorists in very many ways. So are there any precautions that one can take to overcome that?
No, you just, why not? Those people who are practitioners of folk religion are people living today. They're not isolated, they're not in a bubble. Of course they're being affected by mainstream religion. Of course they're seeing, you know, calendar art in the markets, and that's perfectly fine. I think we have to understand that everybody is receiving influences, and that's perfectly fine. It's not tainting, it's not contaminating, it's not making it less real. It's just the reality of what it is. You know, you have your folk religion, let's say, but you also have the mainstream religion, and you're picking and choosing, and you're creating, and that's perfectly fine. I think this idea that nothing is being tainted. There's no perfect, beautiful, pure thing. Life is messy. Folklore is messy, and it has all of these things, and that's perfectly fine.
Thank you, Pravina. One last question, because Meghal, can we cheat for 2 more minutes? You have
Yes,
a
of course, sir. That's
okay.
why we've got a break of 10 minutes.
Yeah, I knew it, but still you have
Because
got
we
a
love to
lot
talk.
of things at backstage. So just 2 minutes. Hiba asks, what precautions must one take when collecting occasional folk songs? What precautions must one take? One must take when collecting occasional folk songs that are not sung anymore and need to be collected in simulation. Okay.
That is an interesting question. You could try to recreate the context in which it was originally sung. But if it's not possible, then you could try to recreate some parts of it. Maybe the locale, you know, maybe it's sung in a closed place where the echo would be part of it. Maybe it was sung with 5 people or in a big crowd, or maybe the meaning is not there, but something else is there. So try to understand from the practitioner, the singer, what were the conditions, social, maybe it was always sung in the morning, maybe sung by a woman or whatever. As much as we can, I think you can simulate, and the rest you note down. I mean, that happens all the time. This doesn't happen anymore, but I remember it. You write it down, and what happens all over the world is those detailed notes lead to revival and revitalization. Things that are dormant, somebody goes to the archive, you as a folklorist wrote everything down, you simulated as much as you can, you added stuff in notes that was not possible. Somebody 3 generations from now goes to the archive and revives it. And that's a wonderful thing that happens over and over again in all genres.
Thank you, Pravina. I was reading at chats. We have young, ignited minds now. And I want to apologize to Somnath and Susan in Zamul and Soumya for not taking their questions. But you can always write to Meghal, and we'll try to share it with Pravina. Soumya has a very specific question, and I think everyone else wants this. Can you please share your email ID with us? Soumya is saying, ma'am, can you share your email ID with me? So I think, yeah, that's a better thing I just wanted to read. Anyway, I don't know how to thank enough my friends, and especially friends like Pravina. But I know best way to say thanks is to take your message to my students and some more folklorists, and I'll come back to you with report, of their performance. And thank you for this lovely and very insightful session. I think there is someone who raised hand. I missed the name, and after that, anyway, I'm sure organizers want to thank as well. So I also want to thank CFSR for giving me this opportunity to be on the same platform with my friend whom I really admire. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I just want to say, really, the 62 people, whatever, 52 people. You don't realize how much this means to me. This means very much to me. It's really emotional to be addressing young folklorists in India. I hope I didn't sound preachy. I'm not trying to preach. I'm teaching you the same way I teach my own students. I really believe in folklore. It makes my heart so happy to know there's so many people in India who are joining me in this. So thank you very, very much, everybody.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Like, I have been following your lectures throughout, and that quotation inspired me to be a folklorist in the future. So that's really inspiring. Thank you so much. Meghal, please.
Okay, I'll just proceed with a slightly formal vote of thanks. Thank you so much, Pravina ma'am, for readily agreeing to our to deliver this keynote address despite the very, very brief amount of time, and you are on sabbatical, and despite that you agreed. Thank you so much, and for leaving us with so many things to ponder about. I'm sure everybody has gotten a blueprint as to how to be a field worker and how to proceed with research in folklore. We thank you, Amit sir, for agreeing to share this session. We are all very, very happy, and thank you for guiding the session and the question answer round. I would also like to thank all the audience members for being here and asking such engaging questions. We hope to begin the next session in 2 minutes. But once before we leave, thank you so much, Pravina ma'am, for staying up till 2:30 in the morning. I think we are truly humbled by your generosity, not just in time, but also with your scholarship. Thank you so much. We are delighted to have you here, and it's a great privilege to listen to you.
Thank you,
Keep
sir.
doing it. Keep doing it. Don't stop. Keep doing it. All of you are doing wonderful work. Keep doing it. India
Thank you.
deserves it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so
Bye,
much.
Pravina. Namaste.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night, ma'am.
Okay, I will ask the technical assistant to please